And we're live with Jamie Hemmings, Wrestling Bookmarks Live. And tonight she's gonna be giving her list of 2020's books that you've read, best books, your recommendations. What are the?
They're gonna be, for me, the best ones I've read, but I want to also preface I haven't gotten to read every book that came out in 2020 because there's been so many, especially with self-publishing. There's been so many wrestling books, so there are some I haven't gotten to read, and I'm really grateful to the writers of Slam who've helped me out this year too. I just want to say that because I don't read them all myself. So
yeah, I've read a lot of books this year, but I don't know which ones came out this year that I've read. But I did read a lot because when we had COVID Con, Kimchi, I bought almost every book that was from everyone that came on.
No one told me we were going to have a mystery guest.
I know. We have a mystery guest, Kimchi. Where are you calling in from?
The deepest, darkest depths of Africa where there is no Wi-Fi.
Yeah, your Wi-Fi is kind of glitchy, Kimchi.
I just wanted to put this on the list. Put it on the list.
Well, it didn't come out in 2020, and I was sticking to 2020 books. Kenny Casanova gave me strict instructions.
So what can we start with?
Okay, are we ready? Okay, so the first one I'm going to start with is The Eighth Wonder of the World, The True Story of Andre the Giant. I think this was a big book for 2020.
That was the book. That was the one book that I haven't got yet, and I want. I have to get that book because I have another Andre book. I don't know who the author is, so I don't want to say it wasn't that great, but it wasn't phenomenal.
I've even bought it for like I bought it for my father, bought it for a friend, I bought it for my son's teacher last year, and I bought myself a copy because when this book came out, it was COVID had just kind of started and everything was shut down, so I had to read it on a PDF. So to me, this book is the definitive journey on Andre's life. And I forgot to mention the authors. We got to do that. So this is by Bertrand Hebert, and I'm not a French Canadian. I'm English speaking Canadian. I'm sorry. I call him Bert, and Pat LaPrade, and it's from ECW Press. And I just really enjoyed this book because it has friends and families of Andre to pipe in and share their memories. And the authors were just really dedicated also to fill in any gaps that readers might have when it comes to pro wrestling, like the history of wrestling in locales like France, Japan, and Montreal, of course, and discussing wrestling's ample cast of characters. And unlike traditional biographies, we don't just get a chronological recollection of Andre's life. We get a lot of interesting discussions that range from like Andre appeared to really enjoy farting. I don't think you're going to get that in every book. You'll get it in this one. Also, the curiosity surrounding the size of Andre's.
You know what? That is an interesting subject matter. I mean,
it's something I must admit. I've thought about it. I'm not ashamed to say it.
I mean, he's got a size 24 shoe.
I can't remember how big his shoe is. Like,
I mean, you got to think, especially when you're a guy, But that's,
I'm sure men are curious too. Well, you know what? I think men and women.
Yeah.
And there's also, it talks about Andre's lust for life and the ladies.
Yep.
Quite a bit of ladies in his life. And there's also, of course, a chapter on the hormonal disorder, which I can't pronounce, that was responsible for Andre being as large as he was. The Big Show had that same disorder too. So, this was a big job for Pat and Bert. They had to tackle a lot of mythology surrounding Andre because there's so many stories. And people, it's kind of like the game of telephone. People just keep repeating what they heard, even if they're not sure if it's true, especially around him. And such a character like that, people could just, the stories were almost bigger than Andre sometimes. So, there was something even I remember when I first heard Andre died, and he died sadly alone in a hotel room in Paris. I know I wondered, how did they get him out of there? And I know that's morbid, but that was my, they answer questions like that. And for people who want to know, they had to break Andre's arm to get him, because they didn't want to do a big spectacle, like the crane and getting, because his life was quite a spectacle. So,
it's terrible.
If you have questions about Andre, they're most likely going to be answered in this book, because that was something I've always thought of, and but just kind of almost embarrassed to ask that sometimes. So I just
I'm
think
gonna put that on my Christmas list.
You should. This is just, it was a really enjoyable book. I know Pat and Bert both just put so much care into this. This was important to them. They really wanted to do a good job. They wanted to make it definitive, comprehensive. And there's even things like Pat worked as the field producer for the documentary. And there were things that that even weren't quite right in the documentary that they weren't afraid to address in the book, because the book, of course, came out after. So to me, this is just a great book, and I think there's still a lot we can learn from Andre the Giant. I just like this quote, if I can read this here, that Andre said, "It's difficult wherever I go. They don't build anything for big people. They have everything for blind people, crippled people, for some other people, but not for big people. So we have to fit in there, and it's not easy all the time." But yet he still says, "I live day to day, and I don't think about the future. You may never know what might happen tomorrow."
Yeah.
Fascinating guy.
Yeah, he was fascinating, and we had Bertrand on during COVID Con. He was during my segment, and it was great to talk to him about how they researched the book, and I wish Andre would have gotten a book or while he was still with us.
I do too.
Because
there was
I feel like
WWE one. I haven't read it, but I don't think it was. When you have a WWE book, they're not going to get as much into the personal side and the facts and really researching and digging deep. So
I think that's the one that I have. But he's such a fascinating and like mystique of a figure that sometimes I go on YouTube and just try to find home video footage of him, just like his normal life, and you just can't find anything. And I would love, that's why I thought that documentary was awesome. And I'm excited to pick that book up.
It's also really sad. Like I just remember reading in the book, like he got to go to Japan so many times, but he couldn't use the airplane bathroom, and that's like a 14-hour plus flight. Like just things like that you take for granted. And and I just reading this when COVID first happened and everything is still so unknown, and just we can still learn a lot from him, how he persevered with so many things going on in his life that were difficult for him.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't he make the choice not to have the surgery?
And they talk about that, like nobody's really sure why. Like there were some people who felt Andre thought God made me this way. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wouldn't be special if he got it. Could be fear. Yeah. Because of the surgery too. So, but like the Big Show had the operation, and he's lived a lot longer than Andre and has a much different quality of life, I'd say, than Andre as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's definitely on my list.
Yes. Are we ready for the book number 2?
Okay.
Okay, this is a massive one.
Wait, how many books do you read a year, would you say?
That's a good question. At least 100, I'd say. And not all
books a year? Wow.
Yeah. Maybe.
That's a lot of books.
No, maybe you know what? There's 52 weeks.
I mean, 2 a week is that's a lot of reading.
Yeah. I go through them pretty fast. You know what? Maybe 70. Should we?
I can, depending on what the book is, like I can bang it out.
Yeah.
Depending on what the book is, some of them, like the Beefcake book, and the Kamala, a lot of Kenny stuff I could bang out pretty quick.
Yeah.
I just read the Tony Atlas one. That was real. That took me. I couldn't put it down. I mean, that one
I want to read too. I haven't read that one yet.
That was a great book too.
My holiday list consists of like 95% of wrestling books, because there's still so many I haven't read and so many that come out all the time. So
yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go. Number 2. What do we got?
Number 2. This is massive. Look how big this is.
Let's see it.
This is the Wrestling Observer
okay.
yearbook. Whoops.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Yearbook for 1997 by Dave Meltzer, and it's the last time WWF was number 2. It's published by Titan Insider Press, which is the publishing arm of the Inside the Ropes monthly magazine that was launched this year too.
Okay.
So, massive book. Dave Meltzer, of course, writes the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
Yep.
So I'll tell you this story. I've done the story in this book. It hasn't gone live on Slam yet, so you're getting a bit of a spoiler, a sneak peek. So 1997 was a huge year for wrestling. If people could think back, I know it's a while ago, but and this edition this yearbook has never been released. And for the first time ever, this is a printed yearbook. Because Meltzer started the newsletter in 1982. And later that same decade, he started putting together yearbooks, and those would go out to the newsletter subscribers. But he stopped doing the yearbooks in 1990. So we got a 1997 yearbook, brand new. And some of the highlights of the yearbook for me included there's a chapter on the future of no holds bar fighting. ECW had its first pay-per-view. So this is how far back we're going. There was Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, a tension kind of before leading up to the Survivor Series where the Montreal Screwjob happened. And of course, Montreal Screwjob is in this book too. Arn Anderson retiring, the life and death of Brian Pillman. Like there's so much. This is like over 400 pages. So there's so much. And people may remember Meltzer's reporting on the Screwjob was really highly regarded then and now. Like even Bret Hart said it filled in some of the gaps for him, and he was, he was there. So this helped Bret fill his knowledge. And Meltzer recalled that during that time when the Screwjob was happening, he felt a lot of pressure to keep readers updated on the story, and he didn't get a lot of sleep during that time. So if you are a fan of Meltzer, I will say it's very, very text heavy. There's no pictures in here.
Wow.
But if you want to look over the newsletters, they're put together by theme. So like there's a chapter on the screw job. So all the newsletters dealing with the screw job, like the sections from the newsletter are in that chapter. But it's a pretty massive book, but it's interesting, especially if you're a fan of Dave Meltzer's, and also if you want, I found it very nostalgic to read through and be like remembering things that were happening in 1997, because you got like the Monday Night Wars going on, just so much, and like I said, ECW having its first pay-per-view, so it's kind of nice to relive that stuff. But it's a big read. Like that one, I didn't finish that in a day or anything. Like that was over a few days.
Right.
Okay.
Where can we okay, so I'm gonna put up a link here. Let's see.
Yep.
We got the Andre the Giant one. So if people want to just that. Boom, there it is. There's the link. For some reason it only goes on the YouTube page for some reason. So people are gonna find the Andre on Amazon. Where would they find the Meltzer book?
The Meltzer one was also on Amazon.
Okay.
People in the UK, Inside the Ropes does have it on their website. I'm not sure if it's electronic copy and a printed, or if it's just electronic, but I was able to get both of those on Amazon. But also check with your local bookstores too, if you want to call them up and see if they'll order it for you if they don't have it in stock. We always like to encourage the use of local bookstores too, but most of these you'll be able to find on Amazon.
Okay, cool.
We ready for another one?
Yes.
Okay. This one's a bit controversial. So this is Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich. You had Vinnie Barry on the show recently, I believe.
Yeah, yep. We just had him on last week.
Yeah, that was last week. I forgot. This is by Lance Vaughn and Vinnie Barry, and it's published by Wrestleville in conjunction with Walking on Hot Waffles Publishers, which is Kenny's publishing company. This one, you have to go to lancebychance.com to get it.
Okay.
I was just working on this story today. So this one hasn't been live on Slam either. So this book is about a man named William Kevin Vaughn, and he was just on the golf course one day. He just competed in a bodybuilding competition. So he had caught the attention of David Manning, who was the booker referee for World Class Championship Wrestling. And then suddenly this Manning came up to him and said, "Hey, have you ever considered being a professional wrestler?" And Vaughn had never thought of that. He'd never had any inclination, didn't even really watch wrestling. I think he said a babysitter of his when he was a kid watched wrestling, but he didn't. So David Manning had approached Vaughn because, unfortunately, David Von Erich had just died quite young and unexpectedly. And he, of course, is a member of one of pro wrestling's most infamous wrestling families, the Von Erichs. Mm-hmm. So Fritz Von Erich, who was the patriarch, the father, and also the promoter for World Class, needed to find a replacement because there was a hot feud between the Von Erichs, which now consisted of Carrie and Kevin because of David passing. And there were 3 members of the Freebirds, Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts. So to continue this hot feud going on, we needed somebody else. And it was felt that younger son Mike wasn't quite ready to be put in that position, didn't have enough experience. So here's Vaughn from the golf course. He's, muscular, blonde. They think, okay, we can pass him off. We're going to call him Lance Von Erich. And he's not related to the family at all. And we're going to say he's the son of Waldo Von Erich, who they have said in wrestling was Fritz's brother, but wasn't, of course, in real life. Mm-hmm. So while Vaughn was only on the world-class roster for under 2 years, he's undoubtedly part of a moment in pro wrestling history that I didn't realize this, but it still elicits such an emotional reaction from some fans and figures in pro wrestling. There's people that are, to this day, are angry that this person said he was a Von Erich and wasn't. And when Vaughn would leave after less than 2 years, Carrie and Fritz Von Erich, both on 2 separate television segments, each broke kayfabe and admitted that Vaughn was indeed not a member of their family. So just so many things happening, such a big dramatic situation. And there are people that, there are fans that, like I said, they were very upset when this happened, that, we were lied to by the Von Erichs. And there's also people like Jim Cornette is one that has especially been outspoken about this on Dark Side of the Ring, that said, the fans didn't think he was a Von Erich anyways. And this is and he also called it one of Fritz's biggest mistakes ever. And it just, to me, just how passionate people get, like the hate they will give this guy, it was just a guy given a golden ticket.
Yeah.
Somebody said, here's a golden ticket. Like, what would you do? Somebody said, you could be a wrestler. You could make a lot of money. And he went into this and, just the reaction people had, like how passionate people were about the Von Erichs and just felt so lied to, or maybe some, and I think there's some people who maybe don't care, but it's just such an interesting reaction to all this that happened to him.
Well, what I think is funny about that is a couple things.
Yeah.
I hear so many times about wrestlers where, they were doing something not wrestling, and someone came up to them and said, "Hey, you ever thought about being a wrestler?" Right? We hear the story. No one's ever come up to me and asked me if I ever thought about being a wrestler.
No, me neither.
I don't know why. That doesn't happen. And the thing about like breaking kayfabe about being the Von Erichs weren't even Von Erichs.
Yeah, that's not their real last name.
They weren't even part of the family.
Yeah. It's just,
I find the whole thing hilarious.
Bizarre. Yeah, no, I thought it's hilarious too. And when I got to speak with Vinny and Lance, and I'm like, it's not like he killed somebody. Like, people were just acting like this was like, and even like for Jim Cornette to say this is the worst thing Fritz has ever done. I'm like, well, I think murder would have been worse. Like, it's just, he
my hot take would be, growing up a kid in the 80s where I watched, Superstars of Wrestling on Saturday mornings, and then I would buy like, PWI and read about the Von Erichs. I consider them like the minor leagues. I never thought that they were anything. I know if you lived down south, you probably, revered them and thought that they were this great wrestling family. And I'm sure that they were in that area. But when they came on TV, I never thought that it was anything special. I would change the channel.
I don't think it was the same. Yeah. Like, I know, I don't think it was the same if you didn't live in that area. Like, if you weren't from Texas, you might not like, and I know the first time I saw Kerry Von Erich was when he went to WWE as the Texas Tornado. I didn't know all the history. And now, of course, they've had such tragedy. They had their own Dark Side of the Ring episode.
Yeah.
So, more, and even on the network, you can watch some episodes of World Class and YouTube and things like that. So it's a little bit different now, but people were really, like, even to this day, people get really upset about it. And I thought it was a really interesting book because I didn't know a lot about this point in history, and I didn't know, or in pro wrestling history, I should say, and I didn't know the reaction people had to him, and that, Lance has been out of wrestling for about 30 years. He did wrestle after he left World Class for about 10 years, but mostly in like international locales, a lot of in South Africa. And he hasn't even lived in the US since like 1987. So, just for him, he didn't really ever think about doing a book. And Vinnie Barry approached him about doing an article. And then when they got to talking, they just realized, there's more here. And maybe, we could put this into a book. And they even had, what I thought was interesting is they had Kevin Von Erich put in a little word at the beginning of the book. And it's not very flattering to Lance, but and Lance didn't really want to have that in the book, but Vinnie felt it's kind of when you are in the news, you're always told you got to get every side of an argument. So Vinnie felt, just to do the job properly, he wanted to give that opportunity to Kevin to contribute something. And at first Kevin didn't want to, and then Kevin got back to him and changed his mind. And it's just a short little paragraph, but he's not very nice to Lance, and they still put it in there. So, which I think people will find interesting too, the fact that Kevin contributed just a little piece to the book.
Yeah, it's that book's absolutely definitely on my list as well.
Yeah, but like I said, that one you have to go to lancebychance.com.
Yep. How many pages was that one?
That book?
Yeah.
See. It's not super long, and it's the same kind of print from Kenny's books, so it's bigger font. 231.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a really interesting story. And I think for people like myself who didn't know a lot about it, and maybe if you're one of his detractors, I think you might have more of an understanding of him and why he took the
absolutely. Yeah. I would think anyone who either loved the Von Erichs or hated them would be interested in reading that book.
Yeah, and he didn't set out, it's not a Von Erich bash fest either.
Yeah.
Like, he could have said a lot more and disparaging things, but even he said he wasn't out to hurt anybody, just wanted to share his story, and but it's not this salacious Von Erich bash fest. So I think if you maybe have your doubts, you weren't a Lance fan, I think you still can learn something. I think you should still give it a chance. Give Lance a chance.
Yeah, I like it. Let's see. Jason Presley agrees with me. He says, ridiculous people to be mad. There were no real Von Erichs. I couldn't even find any in the U.S. Census records.
That's not their last name?
You know what? I might change my last name to Von Erich.
Yes, we all should. Well, and you think about it, like, for years on WWE, just this is just an example just to come up with that's popular. There, Kane and Undertaker were brothers.
Yep.
I don't remember any outrage when people realized, hey, I don't think they're really brothers, or half brothers, I guess was the story.
I was actually pretty outraged about that.
Oh, well, so other than Eddie, the rest of us were fine. We all lived, yeah. No, I didn't realize, like, I guess still, to this day, if it's on, like, putting posts on Facebook, I think Vinnie said he sometimes would, just to see how people would react, he'd put, like, my favorite Von Erich was Lance, and people would be, ah! So, like, still causes a reacation. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're ready for another one.
Yep. Eddie Bobo Von Erich. Oh, I like that.
Yes. I think we should officially do that.
Yeah.
Officially. Because Eddie Bratz doesn't have the same.
I know. It doesn't. That's not a good wrestling name. That's like I'm a jobber. I have to be a jobber.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think. So.
Let's see what we got next.
The next one is the comic book Encyclopedia of Pro Wrestling.
I have that, but I think I'm keeping it in the package.
Oh, I didn't. Package for me.
I think I'm gonna buy another one because I want to actually read it. But I like it. Anytime something comes sealed, I just like to keep it sealed because I like the artwork.
Yeah, I have a bunch of things behind. Oh, this way, a bunch of things behind me still in boxes, so I understand that. This one's written by John Crowther, and I wanted to include a graphic novel because my son is 10 and he loves to read graphic novels. So I wanted to make sure we showed some love to the graphic novels. And this is volume 1, so they're planning more. And readers can look forward to unique stories that can only come from the world of wrestling. Like, I remember reading about Bruno Sammartino hiding from the Nazis as a child and having his first match ever with a orangutan.
Wow.
Or Nikolai Volkov escaping communism. Like, you're bound to learn something new, even if you've heard some of these stories before. And just to see these stories presented visually is just really cool to venture into. I think it's just, it's a totally different medium than a novel. So I know it's not for everyone, but I like to sometimes pick up a graphic novel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's definitely a cool like a cool take on wrestling.
Yeah.
Right. Like a different spin on it.
Well, and some people, they're more visuals. So I like to, like, we try to cover a lot on Slam of graphic novels as well, because it's important. Like there's people who really, like I said, my son really loves to read graphic novels. So we want to make sure we include them too. And along with Sammartino and Volkov, we also have stories on the Killer Bees, Sunny, the California girl from Glow, the original Glow, Bobby Fulton, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jake Hager, Lanny Poffo, who's been on the show too, Ricky Morton, and there's also some Encyclopedia entries. So people like Macho Man, Miss Elizabeth, my personal favorite, Hulk Hogan, Jake Roberts, the Iron Sheik. Like there's lots in this book. And it's what I thought neat. I got to interview John about this book, and he's an attorney by day, and he's just a firm believer that you should have a hobby outside of one's work. And 5 years ago, he decided to get into writing comic books, and he was kind of inspired to do that because there was so many hyper-sexualized female characters in comics, and John's daughter was a teenager at the time, and he kind of wanted to create something that she could be proud of, she could look up to. And so he started with Rochelle the Teen Cockroach, which featured a teenage girl with the superpower of cockroach DNA. And it's just a fun little book, and the art's really great and fun. And there's going to be a part 2. It's just going to have people like Rocky Johnson, the Warlord, Hollywood from Glow, Magnum TA, Terry Funk, Billy Gunn. Like, it's such a great medium and so many things you can do with it. So,
yeah, no, it's that is cool.
Yeah. And mine is signed by John Crowther. I don't know if yours is signed.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get back to our not our novels, our nonfiction books here, but this is Too Sweet. Gotta do this. This is Inside the Indie Wrestling Revolution by Keith Elliott Greenberg, and this is from ECW Press.
Okay.
I think you've had Michael Holmes on there, the executive editor, has been on your show before.
Well, we've had Keith on as well.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep.
So for people who may be more familiar, Greenberg was on the retainer writing for WWE publications for 22 years. I remember I'd see his name in WWE magazine when they still had one. I'd see his name in there. And because it's 3 names, it was a bit longer. So I was more prone to remember it. But this is a love letter, I think, to indie wrestling. And he writes so passionately in providing his insights on multiple, not just American, but also international indie promotions, like past and present, large and small. It's got so many in here. And one could argue there were 2 key catalysts to Keith writing this book. The first would be, we've mentioned Dave Meltzer before, but he was asked via Twitter in May of 2017 if Ring of Honor could ever draw more than 10,000 fans to an event. And Meltzer answered, not anytime soon. In Meltzer's blunt way, that's how he is. And his response was met with a tweet from a pro wrestler people might know, Cody Rhodes. Who said, I will take that bet, Dave. And then, of course, we know that AEW is created. So all these things came to pass. But the other thing was that drew Keith to writing this book was he attended WrestleMania 34 with Michael Holmes, executive editor at ECW Press. And they both saw that there was just as many people wearing Bullet Club t-shirts as like John Cena, Roman Reigns, or like, the big t-shirts for WWE at WrestleMania. So they thought, there's something here. And this is probably a good time to write an indie book. So, and as I said, also, there was also the event that Rhodes took on Meltzer's bet. And in September of 2018, over 11,000 wrestling fans would show up for the All-In pay-per-view. And then AEW would debut on TNT a year later. So this is just, like I said, a love letter to the indies. And also, he wanted to make a comprehensive guide to the indies because he also dedicates space to such subjects as the print-on-demand company Pro Wrestling Tees, which has been really big for the indie workers in the wrestling community. And also Chris Jericho starting up the pro wrestling sea cruises. Like that's what kind of sets Keith apart from his peers, is just also including these other details you might not think of, but just give you such a wide variety of things to read. And there's going to be a sequel. He is already working on a sequel that's going to talk about how COVID has affected indie wrestling, had the speaking out movement, all the furlongs and releasing of WWE talent, the cinematic matches we all got to see this year, and the introduction of the Thunderdome. So it's definitely, if you're interested in indie wrestling, there's even some, like I live in the US right now, but when I lived in the last place I lived in Canada, I attended some indie shows, and some of that organization was mentioned in here, which I thought was cool. Like, it's not just American. He goes, like, he's got international, he's got Canadian indies, lots of stuff covered in here. So if you are an indie wrestling fan, I think you'll really enjoy this book.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'll tell you, I think COVID actually helped indie wrestling.
Why do you say that?
Well, because I read that the WWE is getting rid of house shows, right? Moving forward.
I didn't realize that, but I can see.
So if they're going to get rid of house shows, well, that just opened up a huge, appetite for people that want to consume live local wrestling.
Yeah.
Whereas before they were competing against Vince and WWE, and now they don't have to.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. Oh yeah, no, and I just think like I live here in New Mexico, and the last wrestling shows I saw were 3 WWE house shows. This is, of course, all prior to COVID, so that's going to be interesting. And I hope indie wrestling, you got to step up and make, because people will be wanting to go to shows. So this is your opportunity once everything is safe and all that, of course. So
maybe I could finally become a wrestler.
You could,
or a manager.
Eddie Von Erich.
I could be I'd be a great manager.
Maybe you could borrow the kimchi outfit from Kenny.
Maybe.
Okay. So the next one I have is a photo book. It's kind of like a coffee table.
Ooh, okay.
Book. And this is Friday night in the Coliseum. I'll back up here. There we go. And this is by Jeff Winningham. And this is out from Dancer Press. And this one you have to go to Jeff Winningham's website to order.
Okay.
So this
we had him on too.
Yeah, most of the we talk in similar circles, the same people. Yeah. So this book first came out in 1971, and it was kind of something, if you wanted a copy, you kind of had to look on eBay and not always pay the best prices. You get some outlandish prices on it. So he released it this year, and how Winningham ended up taking pictures of wrestling shows in Houston was he was kind of looking for crowds gathered in an event of some kind. And he saw an ad in the local paper for a pro wrestling show. And through that, he got to attend approximately 35 to 38 Friday night wrestling shows. He'd go there and he'd photograph. And this book is the result of those photographs. And he was also given unrestricted access to the matches and the wrestlers themselves and the promoter, Paul Boesch. So there's some interviews in there because he carried a little recorder around with him, and he's taking pictures, not just of the wrestlers, but the fans. He interviewed the fans as well. So, and this new edition, it's expanded from the original. So it runs now at 180 pages instead of the original 144.
Okay.
And just stunning black and white photos. And this is all, this is not digital. It's real film.
Yep.
Real film cameras. And did you ever use those? I had to use those. The film cameras. Do you remember those?
No, I probably used the Polaroid.
Yeah, I didn't get to use a Polaroid, but I had to use, I know my very first journalism internship, we had to use film. And so you'd be taking it back, and where I worked, for the newspaper I worked at, they developed everything themselves, but you'd be sitting there crossing your fingers, hoping you got a good shot, because digital you can check. Yeah. So anyways, there's photos of people like Johnny Valentine, Thunderbolt Patterson, Wahoo McDaniel, Tim Woods, and there's photos that weren't in the first edition, of course. And Winningham also said he polished up some of the text and he also added an afterword. So when I got to talk with him, I got to speak with him with photographer Andrea Kellaway, who's also been on your show as well.
Yep.
And Winningham was talking about how he wasn't really a wrestling fan when he started this, and he was kind of talking to his mom about this, putting this book together, and she confessed to him that she actually was a wrestling fan. And she was kind of from a more aristocratic family, and she used to actually go to pro wrestling matches every Saturday at the Tennessee Armory in Jackson. And she'd go with her friend Jessie, and at the time, she used to go and until she was thrown out. And the time she was thrown out, she was actually pregnant with Jeff at the time. And why they got thrown out is there was a guy she didn't really care for, and he had cheated, like he was obviously a heel. Yep. And he won, and she wasn't happy because he was a cheater. So she took her hat pin and she jabbed him with it. And then after that, which you shouldn't do, please don't do this, folks, but just the way Jeff talked, just like he was just kind of in awe that his mom would be, she'd be sitting in the front row, she also told him, and the fact that she was a wrestling fan, and that she kind of got expelled and wasn't allowed to go back to this wrestling show after she did that. So that's
a lot of those pictures that he shared were really cool.
Yeah, and just how you'd have to get right in there. Like I'm not a photographer. I've had to take photos just with my journalism background, but just getting in there and just like I photographed a wrestling show before. It was a indie wrestling show in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I'd have wrestlers thrown at me. And I know one time I had to get out of the way and my purse got totally trampled because like I just kind of decided to save myself and not my purse. So it's not easy. And I mean, Andrea has even shared on this show that there's been times that she's, kind of fallen or gotten hurt and things like that. So it's not an easy job by any means. So the fact that he's got this great, like such great, they're stunning. They're just amazing black and white photos is incredible.
Let's see. We have breaking news from Kenny that Zeus Kenny Lister has died from No Holds Barred.
Yeah. He was also he was in the match with Macho Man and Zeus versus Hulk Hogan and was it Brutus?
Brutus, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and he was also in the movie Armed and Dangerous. Is that it?
And he was in one of the Batman ones.
Really?
The Christopher Nolan Batman, the one with Heath Ledger in it. He was one of the prisoners.
He was in the Dark Knight?
Yeah, he was on the boat.
Oh.
Because they were told, they were given the scenario. There were two boats, and they said, how was it that one had to blow up the other? Like you had the choice, so you can either blow.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. But he was so they handed the explosive device to Zeus, and he threw it out the window. Because he was like, this is stupid. We're not blowing the other boat up. I can't remember how exactly the negotiation was going. But yeah, he was in that movie very briefly. And he's been in some horror movies and different things too that just every once in a while I'd be like, oh, Zeus. And that's not his real name, I get. But to me, he's Zeus because from wrestling.
Absolutely.
No Holds Barred. Yeah.
That's too bad.
I don't even know how old he was.
I think he was 62.
Oh, okay. That's really sad. I'll rest in peace, Zeus.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Kenny, for ruining the show. Bringing the show down.
Kind of a downer. It's supposed to be like holiday, yay, books.
Wow.
It's okay. I'm appreciative that he told us actually. So
yeah.
Okay. So my next book, this is called Matt Burns, and it's by Ryan Dilbert, and this is self-published. Oops. Here we go.
Oh.
This one you can get on Amazon as well. And you'll notice it's kind of tiny. So this one it's an example of flash fiction, which I didn't know until I did this story. So that's stories that are shorter than 1,000 words. This is just several short stories. Mm-hmm. And it's a chapbook, which is a small publication of stories or poetry. It's usually under 40 pages. So this is it's probably one of the most unique books involving pro wrestling that I've ever read. It's a combination of pro wrestling themed fiction with a twist. So it's wonderfully weird. It's surreal. This isn't going to be for everyone, but I really like this. And the author shared with me that most of the tales were inspired by real pro wrestlers, kind of as a starting point, and then he'd veer off. And sometimes where he veered off is very surreal and very strange. And So like I said, not going to be for everyone, but I thought it was cool. Like, I'll just give you an example. There's one story called Separation, and a female pro wrestler wakes up in her hotel room. You know, she's had a rough night of wrestling, and she discovers that her injured shoulder has just completely abandoned her. It has left. It is so tired of being injured and enduring all the pain, so her shoulders just decided to leave her body. Like, that's the kind of stories we have in this book.
She has no shoulder.
Yeah, just left. So another story is The Last Halstead Sister, which has the last remaining sister of a wrestling family desperate to resurrect her deceased siblings. So pro wrestling fans will probably think about somebody we've just talked about, the Von Erich family, and the tragedies that befell them. So this is just, it's like I said, it's really whimsy, surreal. Some people are going to find it weird, but I just thought it was just so original, and I thought it was just something so different from what I usually get sent for wrestling books. And the title of the book is Matt Burns, is a nod to the infamous burns that wrestlers get on their skins from like rubbing, like practicing the mat or in the matches and things like that. And Ryan Dilbert also said it's a metaphor for the range of emotions readers are going to experience as they read the book. So
that sounds pretty cool. Sounds different. I like it. It's
different. Yeah, it was very, and he's an author, and he's a 4th grade teacher. So,
are there other pictures in the book at all that you can share? Curious.
Pictures?
To see. Are there? Yeah. No.
Just this front one.
Just the cover. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's, as you can see, it's kind of got it's not quite your regular photo on the front there, so you kind of have this. I keep saying surreal, but it is. It's such a surreal book. So. Weird. Okay, so that was fiction, and I thought I'd show you one that's historical fiction.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is called The Gimmicks by Chris McCormack. I really like the cover on this. I think it's a really catchy cover.
Yeah, it's cool.
And this one is published by Harper, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. So you definitely will be able to find this bookstores and Amazon. So this novel follows the lives of 3 main characters, Ruben, Avo, and Mina, from Soviet Armenia to California during the years of 1971 to the present. But there's also a kind of a 4th character, and it's kind of a character that's in the background, but the presence of this character is always felt, and that's the aftermath of the Armenian genocide. Now, for some people, be like, what? Because this was not an incident in world history that I learned about in school. So if you didn't know about it, that's okay. I didn't know about it either. It was the 1915 Armenian genocide, is when Turks slaughtered over 1 million Armenians at the end of the Ottoman Empire. And what makes that event kind of a controversial event still to this day is that Turkey still denies that this genocide ever happened. And there's many powerful individuals throughout the nations to this day who will either deny the event happened, or they don't want to categorize it as a genocide. So this was actually an event in history that I was kind of been learning about myself when I heard about it before the book came out. Like I said, because I wasn't taught about it in school. But I watched a documentary by Joe Berlinger. People might know him. He did he was involved in 3 documentaries through HBO on the West Memphis 3 case. Mm-hmm. And he also did the Blair Witch 2 movie. Don't watch that. He's better at documentaries. But he did a documentary called Intent to Destroy, Death, Denial, and Depiction. And that talks about the genocide, and also talks about the making of a movie called The Promise, which is also about the genocide. And that movie has Christian Bale in it. So those are 2 other films to watch if you're interested in learning more. So what happens in the book is the character Ruben is obsessed with the genocide, and he wants retribution, which leads him to joining an extremist group. Avo is Ruben's cousin, and he's been living with Ruben and his family ever since his parents died. And Avo's torn between wanting to move on from the past and also, being true to his cousin because he feels he owes him so much. And he tries to follow Ruben into this extremist group, but his heart's not in it. So he ends up escaping into the world of professional wrestling. And Mina, the character, is the girl they both love, but her heart belongs to Avo. So we've got a real historical event, a love triangle, a foray into professional wrestling. And Avo, when he goes into wrestling, his character's name is the Browbeater, because he's got some pretty intense eyebrows. So there's also murder, betrayals. Like there's lots going on in this book. Like it's hard to summarize because there's not that it's complicated to read, but there's a lot going on that I'm leaving out. And I do have to say, pro wrestling is just a subplot, though. It's not like the Armenian genocide is more what this book is about. But it's just unforgettable, and the writer is so much intricacy and depth, and it's something just something a little bit different that I'm not used to always getting. I'm used to getting a lot of autobiographies and biographies on wrestling. So if you are a historical fiction fan and a wrestling fan, you might want to check this one out.
Cool. Do you think you could maybe next time put together a diorama to show us what happens in the book?
Maybe. Yeah. Use white glue and
kids. I don't think kids do that anymore. I used to love doing dioramas. Read a book and then do like a Judy Blume book or something like that. I think right.
This one might not be such a nice.
Good point. Yeah.
Might be some blood I like horror, right. So I'd be interested in it, but I think everybody else would probably be appalled. You don't really get. I'm not really creative that way, like writing wise, yes, but when it comes to making actual physical art, I can't draw or anything like that. I don't know.
No, I tell you what though, I am a great drawer in my mind. In my mind, I'm like, this is what I would love it to look like. I just can never figure out how to get it to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
My husband can draw. I'm terrible at it. So that's probably why I didn't go to art school. Went into journalism instead.
Okay. What do we have? Do we have anything next?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have lots. I prepared a lot. So
yeah, let's see what we got.
So the next one, I don't have this book because I got it as a PDF. Shamrock, The World's Most Dangerous Man by Jonathan Snowden, and it's published by Hybrid Shoot. And this one, I think, is Amazon or a local bookstore. This one I've seen in quite a few places. So this one's intense. And I had a chance to interview Jonathan Snowden. He just writes so fearlessly and witty. And what I really love, I'm really nerdy if people put in a lot of research to books. I like footnotes and appendices, and I love to see all that stuff. And he has 432 footnotes in this book, and some of them are just hilarious. It's not just boring footnotes. He's got little facts, who he talked to, sometimes just makes witty comments about people. This is really well done. And I'm not even a huge Ken Shamrock fan, and I'm not a follower of UFC. I just kind of know Ken Shamrock, of course, from his wrestling career. But this is one, I couldn't put this book down. So if you're not a UFC fan, that's okay. It is pretty UFC heavy, but I just kind of found it interesting because it wasn't a world I knew a lot about. But it's I wish I had the cover with me. Do you have? Yeah. So I was going to talk about the picture, because look at that. Cool cover. It is. And that was one of the first things I was like, I have to talk to you about this cover. And I guess they were at an indie show, the author, and he brought along a photographer that he knew. And they kind of just put him against a background in a crowded dressing room and just got this shot. And my husband and I have this phrase we like to use sometimes, that certain people, you just look at them and they've seen some things. Yeah. That guy has seen some things. And that's just, to me, what I think of with that picture. This is this is a fighter. This guy has been through some things. There's some things that haven't been great in his life. There's some hard times and some good times, I hope, too. But this is just it's not a glamour shot. It's actually quite ugly, if you want to, say that. But I just the cover alone was just so shocking.
Who was the publisher of this book?
I believe it's his independent publishing. Okay. This is his, and it's called Hybrid Shoot.
Yeah, that looks like a book. I mean, just looking at that book, you're like, I want to read that book.
It is. And like I said, even if you're I don't really follow UFC or anything, this is a great book. But once you get in, you're not going to want to put it down. It's just that powerful and that intense. And although when I first kind of started it, because it talks about his, as most books do, it opens up talking about his childhood. And I kind of had to close it after 9 pages, just set it down for a minute. It's pretty intense and pretty heartbreaking, and just being like, you're a parent too. Just reading about that, of what Shamrock and his siblings had to go through. It's pretty brutal. And when I wrote the article, I remember saying, like, this is kind of like comparable to going to a round in the octagon, and we're only on page 9. Like, this is just, it's just intense. The book's not officially authorized by Shamrock, but he did participate in several hours of interviews with Snowden. Like, it took 3 years to make this book, and Snowden also conducted more than 100 interviews with various people in Shamrock's life, including Shamrock's own children, and Shamrock's biological father, who was estranged from Ken and his siblings for 50 years. So he's really put a lot into this, talked to a lot of people. And as you can see from the cover, the life of Shamrock is not a fairy tale. This is a gritty account wrapped with abandonment, violence, addiction, aggression, adultery, ambition, fame, and divorce. Like, this is a big story. And I remember when I was reading it, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was troubled. And I was just like, there's something not quite right here. And I remember talking to Snowden about it, and he goes, you're waiting for the hero moment to come. And it doesn't come in this book. You know, like, the book's about Ken, but he's not a hero by any means. And I was just like, that's it. Because there's things like he's squandering money he earns to the detriment of his family. He would show what he called tough love when he was training people in his Lion's Den facility. And he'd be like beating the crap out of them and be like, you know, making you tougher. It's tough love. And I just be like, why do people like this guy? He has no, empathy. He has no good qualities. And it was just, once I got to talk about that with Snowden, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So a book about Ken, but he's not a hero by any means. And some of the fans may be wondering, Shamrock was involved in a bit of a shoot with the pro wrestling tag team, the Nasty Boys. That's mentioned in the book. You also hear about how the person they had playing Ryan Shamrock, who was supposed to be Shamrock's sister, which he doesn't have a sister in real life. And actually they had a relationship in real life, which is kind of weird because they're supposed to be brother and sister on the WWE storylines.
Yep.
So it talks about stuff like that. And it's just, like it's just an intense book. It's well researched. So much was put into this. This is a really good one. This is one of the top ones of 2020, I think.
I think we got some. Oh, hold on. We had somebody that's coming on.
Oh, is Kimchi back?
Wait. No, he bounced out for a second.
Oh.
That looks really cool. I think I was always fascinated with Ken Shamrock. You know, especially when he was in MMA, that whole thing. But yeah.
Well, you would definitely like this if you're a fan of his, because he
took the pictures for the book, but he wasn't involved in the book. Is that what you said?
Sorry, I missed that.
You said, so Ken wasn't involved in the book at all?
Yes, he was. He was interviewed.
Oh, he was.
Yeah. It's not like the official authorized by Ken Shamrock. Like that. That's what he participated. Yeah.
There we go.
Oh no! I know him.
How are you? Yeah, I'm Jamie's least favorite writer. How are you?
I didn't review any books that you did this year, so that's
that's why he's running in right now. He's coming into
But let's do a little Ian Douglas plug since you showed up. I do have this one next to read. This is The Incredible Brute. This is a coloring book / comic book. Yeah, make big screen. This is by Ian Douglas. It's written by Ian Douglas, illustrated by M.W. How do you say it? Leitzel? Leitzel. I said it wrong both ways, though. Yes, this one's coming up. So all you Ian Douglas fans out there.
That's cool.
My mom and my wife.
All 20 of you. Yeah.
Who was that one signed by, Jamie?
This one's signed by. Let me check. Can we see it? Oh no, I've got the right here. This is signed by the Brute.
Wow.
The Brute Michael Davis, also known as Bugsy McGraw. And Jamie, you probably have another book somewhere in the background.
Oh, you were going to show up, and I had to show off my Ian Douglas collection.
Yeah. Not much of a collection. I just wanted to say a couple things. First, if you'd like to read a counterpoint to the Ken Shamrock book, a book that actually has some hero stories, you can read Dan Severn's The Realest Guy in the Room, which was well written and poorly edited by me.
Oh, I haven't read that one yet, but actually, because sometimes like I had a bit of a bias when the Shamrock book came out. Blech, I can't talk. That because I don't follow UFC, am I going to even like this? But then you're like, it's not just UFC stuff; it's the person. And so I want to read the Dan Severn one as well. So I have to get to that. There's so many. I have a big stack of books on my desk, so I'm trying to get through them all. There's so many I still want to read. So,
well, Jamie, to show that I don't take it personally that you don't read or review any of my stuff, I will send you a copy of the Dan Severn book for free.
Oh, and look what my husband brought, just because.
Oh, well, he's a wonderful human being.
This is Marty's copy. No, this one's my copy. And yeah, I've got a Bugsy signature in there because Ian sent me this because this has been covered on Slam by another writer, but he felt I wouldn't understand the coloring book, so he sent me this one too, which is also on my list. Like, there's so many that I want to read, just even though they've already been covered by Slam. So, and I've read the Hornswoggle one. I did that story.
Oh, good.
That was last year. Was that 2018 or 2019?
Probably 2019. This also proves how unbiased Jamie is. She can't be manipulated. I've sent her signed copies of everything, and yet I can't even get her to read them. So.
and you don't get on my list. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm doing everything.
Ian, I like it, man. I like the self promotion. I mean, you gotta come on and you gotta push your stuff. I like it.
Well, I primarily came on to say hi to Jamie.
I know.
We haven't talked for a bit, so this is good. Yeah.
I know. And I used to bug her incessantly, felt I was getting on her nerves, and just stopped.
No. Oh gosh. You don't get on my nerves. There's much worse than you.
Well, that's good to know. All right. Take care. I'm going to hop out here, and I will continue listening to you, Jamie. And I'm enjoying listening to you on the show.
Yes, thank you for coming. It's so good to see you again. I haven't seen you for a while. Don't be a stranger.
You bet.
And your books are next.
Good. I'm waiting to hear you skewering them. That'll be fun.
Oh yes, just gonna roast it terribly. Yeah.
All right. Take care, you two. See you, Eddie.
All right, we'll see you. Take care, buddy.
I'll just point out I'm someone who, like, I really obviously love wrestling books, and and when I give a review, I try to be fair. I'm never someone who wants to rip a book apart. Like, if there is some things that are glaring, of course I have to write about that, but I don't want people to be afraid to send me books. Not that I'm going to be like, yay, every book is great. We're not, I wouldn't have any integrity if I did that. But I do love wrestling books. Like, the fact that I get to do this for a living is really great. And also the fact that I don't get to read all of them. Some people they're like, oh, are you going to read my book? And I'm like, oh, no, because I've got, 70 on my desk waiting for me. But I just want to thank everybody.
Everybody has a bias, right? I mean.
Well, and just because I liked, just for example, I like the Snowden book. Like, there might be some people like, no, I didn't really like that one. And that's kind of the cool thing too. And I welcome people to make comments and also to tell me about books they've read. And, if they have a book, let me know. Like Ryan Dilbert, he tweeted me. I'd been following him on Twitter. I didn't know about his writing. And he said, hey, can I send you my book? And I'm like, of course. Like, so I'm just excited about books. So, but I don't want people to think, like there's maybe some critics out there who like to tear things apart, like movie critics or book critics, but I genuinely try to balance things. So
the thing for me, like, if I like an author, I'm probably going to like everything that they write.
Yeah.
Like, I used to love Mary Higgins Clark, right? I'm going to like every book that she wrote just because. But if you're someone who doesn't like that style, you'll probably hate every book she does.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and there's some authors I like. What's his name? It's Malloran. He did the Bird Box book.
Okay, yeah.
And Josh Malloran. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But and I like Bird Box, and I like the Bird Box sequel, because I don't just read wrestling books. I like to read a lot of horror and thriller and other biographies of people and stuff too. But he's written some books that I'm like, no, not into that. But of course, there's some of his I really enjoy. So I don't know. I think it's just up to the person. Like, and people should keep that in mind when people are reviewing books too. Like, just because maybe I didn't like it doesn't mean you won't. You might love it. So, and that's okay.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
What other books? What else we got on the list?
Okay.
Thanks for telling me about the Shamrock book, because now I'm going to go out and get that.
Sorry, I miss that?
I said thanks for bringing up the Shamrock. Like, You're costing me a lot of money tonight.
I know. You guys cost me a lot of money with the COVID cons because as I sat there,
how much money I spent on that.
Then my husband's like, because I try and use the excuse, oh, those were sent to me. We didn't pay for that, but
that's what I said.
Yeah.
So my wife, I'm like, I hosted the show. You think people would just send me stuff?
Yeah. No, I spent way too much money at the COVID con, so I understand. So this book is hands down my favorite of 2020. And I've talked about it a lot. Some people might be sick about me talking about it, but I love this book. This is called Women Love Wrestling. It's an anthology. It's self-published, but you can get this on Amazon. And it's edited by Jason Norris. And so this is an anthology that features a plethora of enthusiastic and expert contributions talking about how women love wrestling too. It's not just for men, but it's not men bashing. I don't want people to think it's that. I think like men will get a lot out of this book too. And there are some male contributors. It's not just female writers in the book. So we're covering a treasure trove of topics, running the gamut from skirts in wrestling to stereotypes in wrestling to Shakespeare being compared to wrestling, and writing styles that vary from really fun to academic to investigative. Like, I think there's 30 different chapters at least. I don't know the exact number right off. And I have this one on PDF. I didn't get the physical copy. So this is a book that you can, if you're interested in a certain topic or a certain title of a chapter interests you, you can, that's it right there. Thank you.
There we go.
You don't have to read it from cover to cover. I did, but if there's something you're interested in, you look through the table of contents, you can read that. It's just such a great book, and there's so much to learn and explore here. And one subject that's really talked a lot about is a subject, I don't know about you, Eddie, but I didn't know a lot about, and I still haven't been really exposed to a lot of intergender wrestling. And it's not that I don't like it. It's just something like, it's the same thing with death matches. I just haven't been exposed to a lot. So it's something I'm kind of trying to fill in the gap of my knowledge and learn more about. So I just appreciate getting the chance to learn more about it. And this is because I've read a lot about intergender wrestling. I actually got to talk to other people, like even in my life, that are wrestling fans, and talk to them about it. Like I remember talking to my dad about it, and he was like, I don't know how I feel about that, because he's like, to him, he feels it's like almost in a way watching domestic abuse. And that's one of the main arguments of intergender wrestling. But what you have to, as I got to talk with Dr. Jackie Pratt, who writes about intergender wrestling in the book, that in a domestic situation, what's missing compared to an intergender match is consent. So, and then there's also some people who feel, well, it's not believable to see women wrestle against men, because men are bigger. But then you think of like, well, Rey Mysterio's not a big guy, and he's been a heavyweight champion, so in some of these ways, this argument falls apart. And it's just really interesting to explore that and have discussions with people who, like I said, my dad, it's not that he's like against it. He just wasn't sure how he felt about it, because like me, he hadn't been exposed to it. And there's just so many stories to explore in here. Like there's a story on Shimmer, which is an all-female pro wrestling organization. There's an author, I really liked her book. I think it came out 2019. Her name's Heather Von Vandenberg. And she talks about, she wrote the book Unladylike. And she also in this shares about her breaking into wrestling. And she wasn't a wrestling fan, knew nothing about wrestling. And I still like the story when she was training. The trainer was asking all the people in the group to imitate certain wrestlers. So he'd say Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they would imitate. And she didn't know who any of these people were. So when he even said The Undertaker, who you think everybody knows The Undertaker, she just started pretending she was carrying a coffin. And her coach is like, "What the hell are you doing?" She's like, "I'm carrying a coffin. I'm The Undertaker." She had no idea.
Oh, that's
like,
funny.
And she'd go to, just it'd be kind of like I know about wrestling, but I have no athletic talent whatsoever. So just so much covered here. And a really cool thing about this book is none of the writers were paid. All the profits from the publication of the book, and they have merchandise too, so you can check their Women Love Wrestling website. Like they have t-shirts, things like that. All the profits are being split between RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, and a UK charity called Women's Aid. So
That's cool.
Going to a good cause. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you said you can get it on Amazon. Is that one?
Yeah, that one you were able to get on Amazon. I got that as a PDF from the publisher because they were UK based, so it was just logistics and cost of sending to me. Plus, they sent it through as a PDF. So I don't have the physical copy. So I'm glad you showed the cover because it's a really great book.
Yeah, no, that is a cool book. All right, well, let's try to get to a couple more here.
Well, I'm kind of out of books on my list.
All right, well, I'll share my list.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some
I got they weren't written in 2020 though.
That's okay.
So my first one is my favorite book that I've ever read in the wrestling world.
Can I guess? Oh, yeah, that was my guess.
Yeah, Brutus Beefcake by Kenny Casanova. This is
I haven't read that one.
This is an unbelievable book. Like, even if you're not a wrestling fan, it's a really good book. I mean, obviously Kenny, I think, is really talented in the way that he writes, and he gives you, that first person viewpoint when you're reading the book. And I think Brutus has got a tremendous life story, and I thought it was really well done. I read it in 2 hours. The only downfall I thought to it was that it was only like 375 pages long. I thought it could have been 1,000 pages, because it was it was one of those things where you're done and you're like, oh man, I wish I could keep reading it. Like, there needs to be a part 2.
Oh, maybe you should do a part 2.
You should.
Yeah.
Let's see what else did I read.
That's on my holiday list for my husband to get me, and I haven't read this one either. Kamala,
this was a really great book. Kamala just has such a life story where, and Kenny brings it to life. Everything he went through, growing up, and from Memphis wrestling, and then his experiences in WWE, WWF, whatever they were back then. But unbelievable book. And then obviously, the Tito book was great as well.
Were you scared of Kamala at all as a kid when you saw him on TV?
Yeah. I met him like 15 years ago.
What was that like?
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. I met him and George the Animal Steel at an indie show.
I was kind of scared of him too.
I was
as a kid.
I was scared of George Steele because he was he's a monster of a man. His hand was the size of a baseball glove. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I also got this one. This is a non-Kenny book. When It Was Real.
Oh, yeah, he was on your show recently too. Yeah.
Yeah, Nikita Breznikov, great book.
And that's from Crowbar Press with
Scott Teal. Yeah, it's about wrestling in the 70s, and it really gives you really detailed about the matches that that were taking place back then. Everyone that people know about in like the 80s and 90s are in this book, like Greg Valentine, Bruno Sammartino, Chief J Strongbow, like just a ton of people. They're like, oh man, I didn't realize Greg the Hammer Valentine was wrestling in the 70s, because I thought he was a young guy in like the 80s,
Yeah.
But I thought I did a lot of reading this year as well.
Well, I have some books I can show that are going to be upcoming stories on Slam. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So this one this one's kind of fun. This is Wrestling with Joey Licious. These are I'll start with ones that I'm going to be writing about, and then I can tell you a few that are coming up that I didn't write about these books. But this one I wrote about coming up soon. Wrestling with Joey Licious by Joey Cazzetta and Christopher Lynn. It's a novel, and it's about, there's a show on Amazon. I don't know if it's available to Canadian viewers, but on Amazon Prime, you can watch some shows. And this Joey Cazzetta is a wrestling character named Joey Licious, and he hears the voices of wrestling legends in his head giving advice. And of course, nobody else can see them but him. And so it started with the show, or little shorts, I should say, about the show. They're trying to get the show picked up on like some kind of streaming or channel or something. But then COVID hit, so they've kind of stopped making episodes. And they have wrestling legends in the episode. Like they have Jimmy Snuka, Roddy Piper, the Iron Sheik. Who else is there? This is because there's another picture he sent where all the wrestlers are around him. But this is a really fun Yes. Oh, he did Chris Jericho, like different. Oh, Mick Foley is in the. It's like, so there are clips of the show on Amazon Prime. And then they also decided, well, with COVID hitting, they can't work on getting the show picked up and make more episodes. So they decided to put it in a novel. So something like, due to COVID. So real fun book. And Joey's a really nice guy. Did a great interview with him. So that's coming up on Slam. And this one, because the show's on Amazon, you can get this on Amazon. So Wrestling with Joey Licious. This one, I think this one you can get on blurb.com. But we're going to have a story about this. And you've had this guy on the show. Or no, you had Nicholas on the show, the ghostwriter. But this is One Last Ride, the tale of Cowboy Scott Casey by Scott Casey and Nicholas Massey, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
So this is one I got to read. And it's a pretty interesting tale of... and this one makes this one kind of neat because this is a wrestling book. He didn't want to talk about his personal life, things like that. He wanted to strictly stick to wrestling. So people that just want a wrestling book, if you're a fan of Cowboy Scott Casey, this is a fun book. And I haven't got to interview this person yet because I just finished this book and you guys had her on quite a bit. And I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry, but this is The Chronicles of Mad Maxine by Janine. And I don't know how to say that. I will butcher that so badly. So, and this first came out as a Kindle book. And she's now got hard copies you can find on Amazon, and you can also contact Janine as well, and she will get you signed copies. So,
cool. Okay.
This one's a novel. I think there's some real life stuff in here, like about her wrestling training with Moolah and her background as a journalist. But this one's an interesting one too. We talked about The Incredible Brute. I haven't read that one yet.
Yep.
That was the Ian Douglas one. So this is next. I got to read the Bugsy autobiography that Ian also wrote with him. And then this is through Kenny's line here too. Is this the Blood Time Stories series?
Nice.
Yeah. So this one I'm going to read. I was going to maybe read it with my son, but I want to look through it first to see if it's appropriate. So
Kenny, is it appropriate?
I don't know. I haven't read any of the coloring books yet. So I'm not sure. I'll look it through first.
I think it's called Blood Time Stories. Maybe it's not appropriate.
Yeah, and my son likes nothing scary. So if it's anything to do with scary, so
have you ever given a bad review and then had an author, question you about it?
Trying to think. I know there have been people who've questioned other reviews on Slam, and I can't remember the name of the book. I think it was a results book. I didn't write that review, but the author had such things to say about the review that they actually wrote their own article for Slam about the review. I haven't really. How about I think about it? No.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, yeah, nobody's been really. Like sometimes people have written like, some of those things were kind of harsh, but because I try to balance it with some positive things too, people are like, okay, I see that. I'm not happy about that you said that, but nothing like where they're like, you better lock your doors, or something like that. Like nobody's been like
you're tracking you down,
like threatened my cats or anything like, but it's just, sometimes people, maybe weren't thrilled, but I think because I try to balance some positive things too, because I think there's positives in every book as well. So
absolutely. And
I hope no one gets the idea that they should now send me mean notes or something, but that's kind of part of what we talked about too. Like when I review something, this is my knowledge of wrestling, my viewpoint going into reading these books. So if people disagree, I think we can talk about it. We can, talk about it as adults if they don't agree with me and have a discussion. I welcome people to leave comments. We share the stories on the Slam Facebook page, on Twitter. I share it on my Facebook page as well. And I think you can make comments right on the Slam page under the article. So I welcome people to share, maybe they didn't quite think, it was that book I read was great, or maybe they thought, oh, she was too harsh on it, or any of the writers who do book reviews. Like you're allowed to say your comments too, just, be civil, no name calling, things like that. So,
yeah.
Well, since we're speaking a bit about Kenny, this one I'm going to be writing about soon. And actually, I should tell you, Slam is going to be having a holiday shopping story coming out soon. I don't know the exact date yet, but it's going to have book recommendations, movie recommendations from our movie editor, Dave Hillhouse, and also collectible recommendations from our masked character, the wrestling merch machine. I can't reveal their identity. Very secret. But one of the books I put down that I recommended for those people still going out to shopping or to shop for gifts for if you have a wrestling fan on your holiday list. This was one of the ones I put on there, so that's a bit of a spoiler. It's the Sabu book, and that's by Sabu, of course, and Kenny Casanova.
Yep.
So to me, I know you're a big fan of the Brutus book, but to me, this is the strongest book from Kenny. This has been my favorite so far. So, and if you kind of are into the more hardcore style, or you just want to learn more about Sabu, and I know Sabu is not for everyone. There's, Sabu sometimes puts some controversial things on Twitter and things, but this one is a really interesting story. And like you said, how you read the Brutus book really quickly, this one I couldn't put down. So, and I'm going to have a review story on this one coming out soon too.
I wonder if I can get a copy from somebody.
Yeah, you might know Kenny. Have you heard of it?
See if I can get one sent to my house.
That one, and mine's signed by Kenny Casanova.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Nice.
No, that one I really enjoyed, and I didn't know what to expect because I don't know about you, but just growing up where I did in Canada, we didn't have a lot of channels at first. We had a couple, and then we had 13. We thought we were living large, like cable expanded 13 channels. So
yeah, I
didn't get to see a lot of ECW. I didn't now I've gotten to see it through the network and also on YouTube and things like that. But I would always hear about Sabu in wrestling magazines. This was before having the internet. Like I really depended on wrestling magazines to hear about different wrestlers, like not just WWE, like people outside of that. And Sabu was somebody who was always mentioned in wrestling magazines, and I was always so curious about him, but I didn't know, like I said, he didn't have internet, so I didn't know where else to find out more. So when I read the book, it just made me think of all those days of reading wrestling magazines as a kid and thinking, who is this Sabu guy? And, he'd be all bloody sometimes in the magazines and stuff. So I was very intrigued to learn more about him.
Yeah, is your book, is it signed by Sabu?
No.
No.
Oh.
Oh.
That one was just from Kenny.
You know what's funny is, like, you're right. I never watched ECW either. I think I was in college or maybe high school where I was kind of out of the wrestling phase at that point. But I always heard the name Sabu. Like people would always talk. So obviously he must have been the biggest star at that time because that's the only name that I knew. And I didn't watch it at all.
It was in at least every magazine, and if you got was it Pro Wrestling Illustrated would have, they had different rankings of different wrestlers, like top male wrestler, or I can't remember what they were, but the title offhand. But I know his name would be on a few of those lists, and I'd be like, who is this guy?
Yeah,
I had no idea at the time. So we also have some upcoming book stories. Bob Kapoor is going to review the New Jack memoir. And Jason Norris.
I just saw that too, yeah.
The New Jack one?
Yeah, I just saw the book somewhere. I'm like, oh, that would be a book I might be interested in reading too.
Yeah. Well, especially he had a Dark Side of the Ring episode this year. So, and he's a very controversial character. So, Jason Norris is going to review another Kenny book, the Vader autobiography. So we're going to have that coming up soon. There's a new bio on The Rock, and we have a writer named Todd Denault. I'm sorry, I'm going to mess up your names. I'm sorry. And Todd is doing a review on that. We have The Crown Jewel, the NWA Championship, 1959 to 1973. It's by Dick Bourne and Greg Count Grog Mazorjak. Again, sorry about the name. He's going to review that one. Nathan Hatton is going to review the Frankie Kane autobiography, and that's from Crowbar Press.
Okay.
And Mark Bougin reviews you've had this guy on the show, the Mickey Doyle autobiography.
Oh, yeah. He was a great guest.
They both, and it was Tim, right?
Yeah, great. Yeah. That was a great show.
So, I if people who are wondering about my list, these are the books I really enjoyed reading in 2020. And of course, there were others that I haven't gotten to read yet that other slam writers got to read because I don't do this all myself. So, but we want to hear what books you liked. You can always let us know that on Slam. You can let me know on Twitter. My email's at the end of every Slam article I do. You can let me know, or maybe there's a book we haven't done yet that you feel we need to be reviewing, or maybe you yourself can contact me that you have a book. Like, let me know, because we want to cover. I told Jason Norris, he edited the Women Love Wrestling, so we did a podcast not too long ago, and I told him I want to do every wrestling book, and that sounds ambitious, but I want to make sure Slam has every wrestling book on it. So,
wow,
yeah, it's.
Is there? Do you have a person who doesn't have a book written about them that you just hope happens that you really want to read?
Yeah, I'd like to read one on Miss Elizabeth. I'd like to read one on Sensational Sherry or Sherry Martel.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, those are two good ones right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this before the show started. Vince McMahon needs a book, and that one's coming. I can't remember if it's coming 2021 or 2022. I have it upstairs written.
Now, is that a WWE book?
I didn't think it was, but I want to check that, because I've heard. Okay. I thought it wasn't, and then a few people I'm not sure. So that's something I'd like to ask the writer before I say yes or no. Yep. So because I thought it wasn't, and then I was hearing that they might be involved. I kind of heard some rumblings from other people, so that I'd have to check before I say yes or no. I honestly, I hope it's not, because I think it just way you have,
of course, yeah.
You'd get a more realistic, unbiased book. But on the other hand, if Vince is involved, that is kind of cool too. Like if you'd have access to Vince.
True. So I just can't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't know how much he'd be willing to open himself up, or if he did give interviews, of course, there'd be a lot of they'd be very controlled, I'd assume. I don't know. I've never interviewed Vince McMahon. I don't know if I'll ever have that opportunity. So,
but Miss Elizabeth would be a phenomenal story to read.
Yeah.
If it were done correctly, if it could be done correctly. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I don't know how much her family wants to get involved, because I remember when I was in journalism school, I somehow found a number for her brother.
Really?
And called him. Yeah, and because I was just doing a story just for a journalism school assignment, and he was like, I don't want to talk to you, and no one in my family wants to talk to you. And of course, I was trying to be really nice, project and blah, blah, and they were like, no. And of course, she's not in the Hall of Fame, so I just don't think they want anything. I think they're very private people, and I don't think they want much to do. But I mean, they would of course be people you'd want to talk to.
Yeah. For
the book, so I think whoever takes that on, that would be interesting. But I'd want to hear from her mother, and that even if it wouldn't be a great view on wrestling, which I'm sure my guess is that she doesn't have, but they just seem to be very private and don't want anything to do with wrestling right now, which is understandable.
Of course.
She's quite young when she passed away, so that is a very sad story.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, thanks so much for coming on and giving us your list. I think we probably gave some people some, books for their Christmas list to go out and get.
I hope so. Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. And, I'm sorry for all those people who are going to be using their credit cards more after this show. So I know I did it, like I said, after COVID Con, but can I say a couple thank yous before we check out?
Sure.
I just wanted to thank the writers who have contributed to Slam, the book stories this year. So I just got a bit of a list. I'll try and go through them really quick. So I want to thank Greg Oliver, Bob Kapoor, Alexandra Robertson, Andrea Kellaway, who did a video with me for the Friday Night in the Coliseum book, Bradley Craig, Greg Countgrog, Moser Jack, Jason Norris, John Langmead, Mark Bougin, Marty Goldstein. I'm almost done, I promise it's not an Oscar speech. Nathan Hatton, Sebastian Suave, Dorothy Gass, Tom Liturgy, Tommy Agro, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. Don Luce, Gavin Hillhouse, John Powell, Kerry Williams, Robert Pisker, Don Davies, Caleb Smith, Isabella Flamia, Marshall Ward, and Mark Ciccatti. My apologies if I forgot anyone. If I forgot anyone, you obviously caused me grief, and I didn't mention you. No, there's a lot, but like I said, I don't do all the books myself. I couldn't do all the books myself, especially with self-publishing. There's so many wrestling books, so I just thank you so much to all the slam writers who have done stories, and there's so many more to come. We have so many waiting to be published. I've got books waiting to be read, as other people on Slam also have book stories waiting for book stories from them. So lots to come on Slam, and then we're trying to get as many different kinds of books from as many different wrestlers as we can, and also some things like graphic novels, fiction, all sorts of things that we try to get on the site.
Cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks again, and I'm sure we'll have you on again after.
Yeah, I'm sure. If can't find anybody else.
No, I love having you on. We have a good.
I love talking books, so anytime, yeah. It's
we
really fun.
All right, so we're gonna have a show next week, and then we'll probably have 2 weeks off because it's Christmas Eve and then New Year's Eve.
Oh, I just thought. Sorry, there was something Kenny had mentioned.
Yeah,
there might be talk of doing some kind of book awards on the show here.
Yep.
And for people who need their Jamie Hemmings fix, I've kind of been asked to participate. So
awesome.
Watch it in the new year. So sometime in the new year. Forgot Kenny a kind of week.
That's right.
Just the early talks about it. So
yeah.
Nothing.
Cool.
Something else to stay tuned for.
All right. Well, thanks, Jamie, and we'll see everybody next week.
Yes. Bye, everybody.